Well, hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on into another podcast by George. My God, anybody that stuck around for this, I really appreciate it. Of course, it'll always be available for replay on Facebook and YouTube. But here I am a half hour before showtime, all set up. Everything looks good. I'm in the green room waiting for Serge to join me, and kablooey, how goes the internet? And I told him that it was, tragically tragically funny that he's sitting there in Kiev in a war zone and his internet is working and mine isn't. It took a couple of hours, but we finally got this resolved. And I think it's going to work now. So we're going to bring him on in here shortly. Hopefully, folks saw the promo for this. And again, I hope somebody joins us here this morning because we're almost 2 hours late. War plays out in Ukraine, and those are the fingers of the maestro there, folks. That's Serge Tiagniryadno, and we're going to get an update from here. Here is the live line image that I use for him, and the live line introduction reads, singer, songwriter, and musician Serge Tiagniryadno returns to the podcast by George Liveline. He's a world-renowned Ukrainian singer, musician, songwriter, and a sound engineer. From the age of 13, he's been performing on the stage. And that shows you the difference in the talent levels, folks. At age 13 or 14, I was washing dishes in the back of a restaurant. That's what my real talent was. It was one the few things I was any good at was washing dishes, but he was on stage performing. He works regularly as a session instrumentalist and vocalist since 2008. He manages the Crystal Sound Recording Studio, which, in addition to its own projects, creates many Ukrainian and international audio projects. That's where he spends most of his time now. It's where he is now. And of course, he's a holdout in his hometown of Kiev, Ukraine. His wife and kids left the country when the war broke out. They went to safety. He stayed behind. He's still there, and he's good enough to come back on the podcast by George Liveline. So let's take that off the screen and do the old button click thing here and say good evening now. It's morning still, barely where I'm at, but it's evening where he's at. There's our buddy. Hi, Serge.
Hello, George. Hello, everybody. Good
Yeah,
morning.
I've been thinking of music a lot this week because we've lost some great ones here in the past week or two. Tony Bennett, of course, passed away, and then this guy who is huge in my life and family, Robbie Robertson of the band. I think my wife's favorite song is "The Weight," and you think about the last waltz and the night they drove old Dixie down, and Danko and Manuel, those guys. I mean, that was just great. But that's all going away in Ukraine. What's your experience with the band and Robbie Robertson, Serhi?
Well, it's completely unknown here in Ukraine, but of course, I know songs of the band.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he was
Well,
good.
some of the very popular American singers, bands, and songwriters are not very well known internationally, but they are very big stars in U.S. and probably the Chicago is one of the examples because only musicians know their music here in Ukraine and mostly in Europe too, but they are one of the biggest bands in USA.
Beloved here and big, yes. And one of the biggest reasons really is we were starved to be able to see these musicians, particularly in the part of the country that I live in. They didn't come around here very often, and we never got to see them on television. And then The Last Waltz came out as a Martin Scorsese movie. It was filmed in 35 millimeter high production values. I mean, a really great look at a band and its history and its background and all about those guys. It was really a cool thing. And Robbie, he was older than a lot of people thought. He was 80 years old. And anyway, he passed away just a couple of days ago. Now, this
Yeah.
person may have been known a little bit better in your part of the world. I mean, she was huge in Europe, obviously. Sinead
Yes.
O'Connor. And I tell people, all the time that nothing compares to You, that Prince song that she sang. For my money, that may be one of the most emotional vocal performances recorded in history. I mean, it's unbelievable, that song and what she did on that thing. And of course, she had a turbulent life, and it probably had something to do with that turbulence with her demise. But tell us what you think about Sinead O'Connor, Sir.
Well, I can only agree with you. That's incredible vocal performance through all the history of music, and well, what she did is just amazing, and all other her performances are really impressive as well. Well, it's very sad that she passed in so young age. I think she was only 56,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, and
yeah,
again, it was the emotional quality of that, and that's kind of the way that you sing. I can tell from your performances, man. You put everything into it. It's all you. It's all emotive. Now, a lot of singers aren't like that. I mean, they're just trying to be technically correct, and it isn't so much them that's coming through the song. But God, she took that was a Prince song. Now she took that
yeah,
song, and oh my God, what she did. People revisit that. I mean, just in memory of Sinead O'Connor. Go on to YouTube and look at that. There's a recorded performance from the studio, and then there's a live performance that was recorded, and they're both absolutely stellar and outstanding. I can't play them because I don't want to get my video blocked after the fact. Prince's uh, company, corporation, or whatever, they're notorious for blocking
yeah.
videos because they're in some kind of a dispute, a copyright situation. So I'm not going to play the thing here, but it was absolutely great. And then her SNL performance where she tore up a picture of the Pope is still notorious. She was booed off the stage at I think it was the 30th anniversary special for Bob Dylan at Madison Square Garden. I've got that on Blu-ray. It's absolutely great, but I'll never forget Sinead O'Connor. These people were big in my life. And then I mentioned Tony Bennett. Now, he wasn't so big in my life. I don't know if you've looked into that very much, Tony Bennett, but his singing was beyond reproach. I mean, he was one of the greatest.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's also amazing singer, and as well, he not very known here in
Mm.
Ukraine, of course, but for US, he's a big deal.
Well, we've got some people that are. Here's Diana. She wants to wish you well. Some people that stuck
Hello,
around to
thank you
catch
so
this.
much.
I mean, I really appreciate that. Okay, let's get going with the news here. Even while I was waiting for Sergey to come on, they assassinated the president of Ecuador. I mean, I got to mention that.
Wow.
Now we're going to talk about that. Yeah, he was getting in his car down there, and they say one of those drug gangs assassinated him. That's just breaking news as we speak, and I may cover that in a future show. I mean, there's some angles in that the U.S.'s involvement, of course, in that part of the world, and what we've done and not been able to do, and so on. But let's get to this here. This is what we want to talk about today. This is just across the transom yesterday or this morning. The U.S. is still sending money to Ukraine. There are another $200 million in military aid is going to Ukraine. Dateline Washington, D.C. from Associated Press. The Pentagon will provide Ukraine with $200 million in weapons and ammunition to help sustain Kiev's counteroffensive as troops on the front lines face significant hurdles against a well-entrenched Russian defense, according to two U.S. officials. Okay, this is why I want to have Sergey on the show to get his personal perspective, but also what he's hearing there in Kiev, and he monitors the news very closely. We hear that the counteroffensive not going too well. They're not exactly rolling. Like that article says that the Russians are dug in, and it's a slog right now, and that's why they're sending that $200 million. Is that the type of thing that you're hearing as well?
Well, I cannot say that it's not going well because since the war has started, our militaries they deoccupied territory, which is bigger than Moldova, if you know this country, and twice bigger than Israel. So I would not say that it's not going well. Of course, it's going tough. A lot of losses during this counteroffensive right now, and you must imagine the territory that the counteroffensive operation is where it's going on right now. It's more than 1,000 kilometers over front line. There's defensive structures all over the front line. There's hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers and not less of the military equipment, including artillery, including tanks, including fighting jets, including uh, everything Russia has in their arsenal. So if someone thinks that it could be like a cakewalk for our militaries, that's not going like this, of course. And if you only imagine that our militaries should destroy few hundred of thousands Russian militaries, you can just imagine how long it will take to just destroy all these people there, not thinking about fortifications and not thinking about war machines and other stuff. So it will take some time, and the Russian militaries, they not just sitting and waiting, they also attack in some parts of the front line. And well, on the southern direction, our militaries already reached the first line of the defensive fortifications. So they have more advance on that direction. And on the eastern direction, there's everything much more complicated, because Russian militaries, they put most of their forces on that direction. It's Donetsk and Luhansk regions. So there's no chances that it will be in the nearest month that our militaries will free all the territory. It's just impossible physically, because it's all mined, it's all filled with traps, it's all filled with Russian troops, and so far they still have very, very big difference with fighting jets and missiles. We just don't have fighting jets at all, let's say, in comparison to Russian army. So that will take probably a lot more of time that anybody could expect it. But so far, our militaries have only advantage on the front line.
Yeah, it makes me very sad to hear what you've described there, because I said this from the onset. A lot of people did. But, I live in the heartland, the breadbasket of America, basically. I like farmland and agriculture and the flora and the fauna and the open spaces and the beauty of what we have here. And of course, I always think of Ukraine as the same way. I don't know, I've never been there, but it strikes me as being very similar. And my God, what is happening to the countryside, to the country, and then of course the loss of life, which is first and foremost. It's just it's hard to get your head around. You don't like to talk about yourself very often, but talk about Kiev now. What's going on there? You mentioned a lot of the occupation is in the eastern part of the country with the troops. Kiev is over here on the western side. What's life like in the city now?
Well, Kiev is right in the middle of Ukraine, yes, but it's on the western side from from this eastern side. Well, people starting to return to Kiev, because probably so far it's most safe place on the side of the war things. But you know, we have air alerts almost daily. Probably the last week was not daily, but till last week we had everyday air alerts, and we had a lot of missiles heading to us and a lot of drones. But so far, our air defense forces, they are able to destroy all targets that's heading to us. But unfortunately, they cannot make safe all of the cities because Ukraine is a pretty big country. It's the biggest country in Europe, actually, if we're talking about the territory. And we have a lot of cities that are not protected, like yesterday in Zaporizhia, which is pretty much close to the front line. But so it's a big city, more than a million of people living there, and they striked civil buildings yesterday with missiles, and a lot of people died, a lot of people injured, including, by the way, two girls that been playing a gig there. They were singers like me, and they were killed 1 hour after they performed there. So, and it's happening every day, but just in a different cities. And unfortunately, that's just impossible to protect every city from such kind of attacks. It's not some military objects. It's just civilians. And the problem is that we have to protect our militaries there on the front line with air defense systems, and we have to protect our civilian objects. And it's also will take a lot of time to build the air defense system that will protect everybody here in Ukraine. So I can answer your question that Kiev is much safer than other cities, but it's not completely safe, of course.
Oh, no place is completely safe. Now, what about this?
Yeah.
Some people that are, well, they're not apologists, they're not defenders, they're more like observers or analysts, but they would say that maybe Moscow and Russia is playing not as hardball as they could, because if they were, the first thing that they would do traditionally in a war is try to knock out the capital, go in and bomb the shit out of Kiev and try to knock out the command and control, the governmental
Well,
offices, the
that
people
that
like
that, that
yeah,
that's what they tried to do from the first days of war. As you
yeah.
remember, they've been heading to Kiev, and for almost a month we've been surrounded by Russian troops, but our militaries succeeded to get rid of them. So yes, and during all winter and probably they started from late autumn last year, and during all winter and during all spring they tried to the missiles and drones attacked were like daily. And as you can remember, we had huge blackouts because they tried to destroy our energy system and everything like this. But fortunately to us, they didn't succeed it. So
Yeah, I want to read these comments because I've encouraged everybody, not only to ask a question, at the very, it just shows some support and for what series. Let me bring this up.
thank you everybody for
Yeah,
support.
and for the
And I
people
know,
listening in the audio here, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I know a lot of people asking me how it's going on here daily. A lot
Yeah,
of messages, and well, I just cannot answer to everybody, and especially right now, I have had huge projects going on, and I just could couldn't even say that I'm okay. But thank you everybody for
yeah.
your care. I read all your messages daily. Thank you.
Ah, good. Well, I'll read these because of audio only podcast listeners.
Hmm.
Robert says it's good to see and hear you live, Serhii. Hope you and your son are staying safe and well. Slava Ukraine. This is from Kathy. Hi, Serhii. Missing you. Glad to see you're doing okay and okay Happy that I caught you live today. Stay safe, my friend. And sir, he has a lot of friends worldwide. Robin, so good to see you. Please take care of yourself and your family. So, I mean, this is great. These kind of comments. Kristen says, so wonderful to see you. Live after so long, alive after so long, my friend. Blessing to you. And Joanne says, hi, guys. Happy to see you. Yeah. Hi, Joanne. And then last one here quickly. Dwayne says, great to see you both. Well, I appreciate that, Dwayne. Really do. But don't misconstrue or lose sight of the fact that the guy that is the hero here is the guest. Hey, me, folks. All right. Now, let me ask you about this now. This is more on this aid. The latest package will include missiles for the High Mobile Artillery Rocket System, HIMARS. We've heard about that, and the Patriot Air Defense System, munitions for howitzers and tanks, Javelin rockets, mine clearing equipment, 12 million rounds of small arms ammunition, and demolition munitions. Said a U.S. official. The official spoke on condition of anonymity because the aid has not yet been publicly announced. So this is breaking news still. The aid comes as the U.S. funding for Ukraine's nearly all spent, and the Biden administration is expected to request a new package of supplemental aid from Congress to continue that support. Now, Ukraine has already received more than $43 billion, more than $43 billion from the U.S. since Russia invaded last year. Those funds have provided weapon systems like howitzers and millions of rounds of ammunition to fight back against the much larger Russian military. Due to the intense and bloody land war there, much of the ammunition and weaponry has already been used up. Okay, my phone is ringing off to the side. So that brings me to the question about the support, Serhi, because we're entering what I refer to here as the silly season. Again, where I'm at in the state of Iowa, the politicians are descending, and this is all getting very political now. You've got the two political parties wanting to square off over support and financial aid to Ukraine, and that could have an effect or an impact of what they're doing in the way of aid in the future. So I guess the question for you is this enough? And do you need a different kind, a different type of aid other than what is being offered?
Of course, well, our military's been talking about this since the war has started. We don't have long range missiles like Russia has, because to send missiles to our cities, they don't need to go to front line. They can launch it from um, 2,000 kilometers, and we just cannot attack these. Sorry, I was flying. So our militaries just cannot destroy these targets that are launching missiles to us. And the same situation with fighting jets. We just don't have such amount of fighting jets to do something with Russian planes and helicopters. So that's probably the most important question right now, and I know that everybody's talking about this and negotiating. So we hope that in nearest future we will have this equipment on our side.
Let me go to this next story here because this gets a little bit closer to what I was talking about here as far as the changing dynamics here in the United States. Now, this is out of SheerPost. This is one of the left-wing periodicals that I follow. Chris Hedges writes in this, who I think very highly of. This isn't his article, but a poll shows majority of Americans oppose further aid in Ukraine. Okay, now you got to look at these things very closely. Majority of Americans oppose further aid in Ukraine. Well, that's striking. On August 4th, 2023, CNN released a poll conducted with Social Science Research Solutions, which found that most Americans oppose Congress authorizing additional aid to Ukraine in their war with Russia, while previous coverage highlighted a divide between Democrats and Republicans concerning the United States' role in Ukraine. The recent poll results reveal a split in public opinion on whether the U.S. has sufficiently supported Ukraine. The poll was conducted by SSRS, an independent research company, in July with a random national sample of 1,279 adults who completed the survey by telephone or online after being initially contacted by mail. So that's a unique methodology. According to the poll, 55% of respondents say that Congress should not authorize further funding to support Ukraine. 55% should not. An additional 51% believe the U.S. has already done enough to help Ukrainian forces. Now, this contrasts with a poll conducted in February 2022, which found that 62% of people felt that the U.S. could have been doing more to Ukraine. That was just about when the war broke out a year and a half ago. So it shows you the trend line here, Sergey, of how this is going as far as public opinion is concerned. Now, that can change. Obviously, polls are all over the place, for one thing, but also public opinions all over the place. And we're in the political season here. And I guess the question for you is: Are you concerned about that? And when someone like you in the Ukraine, would your folks follow news like this, or this is just too far below the?
No, no, no.
Yeah.
We following all the news, and of course, it's probably one of the most important topic on all the news. How is the support is going to be from U.S. and from European Union and other countries? So that's why it's very important to show what's going on here, because I understand that after 1.5 of year of full-scale invasion, people started to be tired of war and what's going on here, and well, it's probably it is what it is. It's not going to change. The support of people will not raise, but I think that it's important to understand that if we will not be able to defend our country, and if somehow Russia will prevail, that there will be a lot more of troubles in the world. So we're not going to give up or give in any circumstances, with or without help, because as you can remember from the first days, we didn't have anything to protect ourselves. So everything our militaries had that was like weapon inherited from Soviet Union, and it was very, very difficult to do something with very, very big in numbers Russian army. But anyway, our militaries did it somehow. They deoccupied and they released a lot of territories with that weapon. And when we started to receive modern Western weapon, our militaries freed a lot more territories. So it will take a lot, much more than few months, probably a few years, to get rid of all the Russian troops from Ukrainian territory. And we must understand that there is no circumstances that will make our militaries to give in and stand back and let them take our territories.
Yeah, which brings me to the next segment here. Some things that I wanted to talk about here as to what might motivate change. Now, I just had Medea Benjamin with Code Pink. She's one of the great peace activists in this country and has been for decades. And we were talking about the Vietnam War to the Korean War to your war. And I asked Medea, I said, what would cause a change? What would be the motivation for something to happen to end this? And I said, is it simply the body count? And God, who would want it to be that? But her response to this was kind of interesting. Watch this, Serhi. And everybody in Vietnam was starting to have a kid come home in a box on their block. And so finally, people said, no mas, no mas. Do you think that type of thing could and would happen in Ukraine? If I hate to put it in this context, but if the body count continues to escalate the way that it is, that something may get done eventually?
Well, I think it's more likely to happen in Russia, where people are not
Yeah.
defending their homeland, and where we've seen before how Russian mothers have been the backbone of a movement to say, stop war, when they're trying to find the bodies of their dead sons. So I think in Ukraine, because they are, for the most part, defending their territory, this war will go on as long as the West keeps funding it. And that really brings us back to our role in the US, because if our government were pushing negotiations, there would be negotiations starting tomorrow.
Okay, so that goes on, and people can go check out that interview with Medea. But the thing that she said there that was striking, that kind of segues or dovetails with what you were talking about, sir, he is the fact that you're defending yourselves, you're defending your land, your territory. Those Russians that are invading, that began this war by coming into your country, they're not defending anything. I mean, they're dying in tens of thousands. The count is unbelievable as far as the bodies are concerned. And she says that maybe uh, there will be a call in Russia to put a stop to this, maybe from the mothers, because of what's happening down there. Now, you know those people up in Russia. I mean, I used to be in a band with some of them, I think. Do you think that that's a reality, or are they in this forever, do you think?
Well, unfortunately, I must say that knowing those people, I must say that it's impossible. And as the story goes right now, we can see that no numbers, no bodies of Russian soldiers can make Russian people to do something with their government. You know, there's 150 millions of people who are obeying, who are doing everything their government says. So if 1.5 of year of war, everyone in Russia knows what's going on. There is no chances that anyone doesn't know what's going on. If it's not enough for them, so I don't know what has to happen to convince these people to do something with their government that they've been elected, that they living with. So, unfortunately, I I cannot imagine the reason the Russian people will do something. Well, if someone has some other opinion and some other projection to this situation, well, I'd gladly listen to it, and probably we can encourage that thing that to happen in Russia, but I cannot see.
Yeah, I think kind of what you were saying is it probably isn't going to happen. If it were, it maybe come from up there. It's not going to come from you folks, obviously. I got to bring this up from Janice here. She does have to let you know his name is Sergey, not Sergey. Sergey. Well, we
Well,
kind of
well,
settled on a compromise here because it didn't want to
well,
make him
well,
sound too Russian. So
well, it says Serhib or Serge, but you can call me whatever you can
yeah.
pronounce.
I can. That's right. I just call him the man, folks. All right, let me take this away because this gets to what he was talking about. Now, this is another fellow that I follow, John Mearsheimer. This is an article that he authored in Substack. This is a professor from the University of Chicago. The reason that he should be followed is he predicted all of this. I mean, years ago, maybe like back in '08 or '06 or something like that, the situation in Ukraine when nobody was thinking about it really. I mean, everybody thought the guy was kind of off his nut talking about Ukraine, but he was right then. I got a feeling he's right now, and he's echoing what Sergey is talking about here. The darkness ahead, where the Ukraine war is headed. This paper examines the likely trajectory of the Ukraine war moving forward. I will address two main questions. Now, to see all of this, it's lengthy. You've got to go to his Substack to read it, but go to John's Substack, John Mearsheimer. And this is what he says. I'll read some of this and we'll get Sergei's reaction. First, it is a meaningful peace agreement possible. Is it possible? His answer is no. We are now in a war where both sides, Ukraine on the West, with the West on one side, and Russia on the other, see each other as an existential threat that must be defeated. Given maximalist objectives all around, and again, this highlighting is all mine, it is almost impossible to reach a workable peace treaty. Moreover, the two sides have irreconcilable differences regarding territory and Ukraine's relationship with the West. And I get this, the best possible outcome is a frozen conflict that could easily turn back into a hot war. The worst possible outcome is a nuclear war, which is unlikely. It's unlikely, but it can't be ruled out. Second, which side is likely to win the war? Now, he says, now, Sergei would disagree with this, Russia will ultimately win the war, although it will not decisively defeat Ukraine. That ain't happening. In other words, it is not going to conquer all of Ukraine, which is necessary to achieve three of Moscow's goals: overthrowing the regime, demilitarizing the country, and severing Kiev's security ties with the West. But it will end up annexing a large swath of Ukrainian territory while turning Ukraine into a dysfunctional rump state. Now, I've heard that a few times. My God, that's pretty graphic description of what could possibly go wrong here. In other words, Russia will win an ugly victory. I want to wrap this up and then we'll get Sergei's reaction. He says, now, before I directly address these issues, three preliminary points are in order. For starters, I'm attempting to predict the future, which is not easy to do given that we live in an uncertain world. And we're talking about a war. I had Bill Astori on, and he said, you can't predict war. I mean, by its very nature, it's unpredictable. He says, thus, I am not arguing that I have the truth. In fact, some of my claims may be proved wrong. Furthermore, I am not saying that I would like to see that I'm not telling you what I would think would happen or what I would see happening as the war moves forward. I'm not justifying Russian behavior or the actions of any of the states involved in the conflict. I am just explaining their actions because he's an academic. He's kind of sitting back cold and calculating. But like I said, he was correct before in predicting this. So I'm looking at this guy thinking he may know what he's talking about. Are these issues, these points that he's making in this article, are these being talked about in Ukraine at all? Do you see this in your media, Sergei?
Well, everybody. Well, you showed me a big amount of information there.
Yeah.
Some of this probably close to the truth. Some of it's just imagination of this gentleman.
Yeah.
Because well. With all the respect to this man, if he thinks he can explain the goals of Russia, he's wrong because there are no goals at all. If you will just follow all the things that their government is saying, the reasons, the goals for their war, it's changing almost daily. And well, I don't think that it's possible at this point that this will be like a frozen conflict, because there is no chances that we will accept that Russian troops are on our territory. So it's just a matter of time and matter of resources to get rid of all these military troops. And the thing is that probably now the war is going to the territory of Russia, and a lot of facilities, warships, just ships, are starting to blow off daily, and probably that's going to start some processes there that will start to ruin their way of life, their political regime, and other things. Well, I think that's most probable way to end of this war is Russia will just fall apart for a few other countries.
Okay, let me come back in here because a couple of things. One thing I wanted to hit on because we've talked about this in the past. Yeah, sure, he's a great analyst. He's got firsthand experience there. He's got a journalism background. We won't talk about that so much, but the other thing of it is a humanitarian. The things that you've done there to raise money for these causes, with the maternity hospitals and all that. What's top of mind with you right now?
Well, we're doing some things almost every day. Everybody here in Ukraine making some fundraisings all the time, and a lot of people they just donating daily for various causes from charity, like we did with houses for hospitals for newborns, and to just equipment for our militaries, because believe it or not, the aid that's been sent to us, to our militaries officially from other countries, it's just like 30% that's our army needs to defend themselves. So a lot of people here were just donating to buy some equipment to our militaries, like drones, for example. It's probably the most popular thing because you can buy it in some shops online. You don't have to be related to other country government to to buy it, or night vision equipment for our military. So something that's close to military, but that something you can get legally.
Let me ask you about something, because you just mentioned
Yeah.
something that's a left-wing criticism of the military aid to Ukraine, which is that only about 30% of that aid is going to the military. They say, now maybe that's not where the other 70% are going, but they're saying the other 70% is going through the cracks and is being lost to corruption in Ukrainian government and other places. You mentioned that 30% figure. Is that what you were talking about?
Well, I no, I'm talking about that the aid that is sent to Ukraine is not enough for our militaries to fight back. Of course, probably I think that everywhere there could be some corruption or some things like that, but that's not amount of 30%, of course. And the thing is that you should imagine the budget of Russian Federation in military direction. They have unlimited amount of oil money that goes to their military. So that's just we're fighting with unlimited with country that has unlimited resources, and of course our militaries, they're receiving help, they're receiving weapon, they're receiving armors, but unfortunately we have to receive 10 times bigger amount of ammos for our militaries than we have right now to fight back, to defend our territory. So that's that was the most difficult part. It's the war of their resources between Ukraine and Russia, and of course we have less of resources.
Yeah, and again, a criticism of our own government. I think we should have been more aware of Russia's ability, Russia's power, because we thought we could sanction them maybe and assist in this as far as submitting is concerned. Russia has huge resources on its side. Those sanctions have not been that effective. And of course, they've got a huge, overwhelmingly superior
Yeah,
military. And that's what the problem is as far as blasting Ukraine apart is concerned. Um,
you know, the sanctions, they were probably could be workable for Russian people, because if they see that they are sanctioned, that they have some problems, they should do something with their government. They should protest. They should move them in the right direction. But that didn't happen, you know. And for the government, for their president and all the government, these sanction doesn't matter at all. So unfortunately, that didn't work. What can I say?
Well, we've got to let him go here. He's been very patient. He stuck around. The show got off almost 2 hours late because of the internet outage on my side. All my fault. All Mediacom's fault. My media provider. I did want to bring this up because, again, he's got broadcasting journalism in his family background here. This is something that I figured he'd know all about. I just came across this from Human Rights Watch. Russia bans TV rain for critical reporting. A clampdown shows Russians' need for independent broadcasting more than ever. But this week, Russian authorities banned TV Rain, a prominent independent online broadcaster, as undesirable, accusing it of spreading false information about Russia's war on Ukraine, discrediting the military and the government, and quoting other banned outlets. In recent years, the Russian government has attempted to eviscerate critical voices with a particular focus on media outlets. TV Rain, which had 13 million Russia based viewers on YouTube last month, joins the ranks of other leading Russian focused independent media, which the Kremlin has banned as undesirable, such as Meduza, iStories, The Inside of the Project, and Novaya Gazeta Europe. Their journalists have been reporting on Russian war crimes in Ukraine, as well as repression and corruption inside of Russia. Okay, the point that I wanted to make about this, anytime I try to assign fault or blame or try to censorship's right at the top of the list, man. That is a black stain, as if they needed another one against Russian government. Are you familiar with that TV rain thing up there? And can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if you're talking about something in Russia, you should understand one thing: there is no journalism there. So, if you are inside of Russia and you do something for media, that's not a journalism. That's working for government, and there is no option for that. And well, I think that TV Rain is the same thing, but it's one of the side projects of Russian government that should have some influence to the people of Russia that left Russia because they're afraid of something like being summoned to army or being in safety, and they are broadcasting to those people to make it look like there's some kind of journalism there. Well, I don't think that everyone in TV Rain is like working for the government, but most of the media that came from Russia, they are obeying to the Russian government. So, well, they trying to ban everything there in Russia, like YouTube, VPN services, to make their people stay as far as possible from news, from information. That's obvious. So, but still, they have opportunities to receive the information. I mean people in Russia, and well, they for sure they understand what's going on and they do nothing. So I think it's a mutual in Russia that they don't have a journalism, that people don't want to hear the truth, and the government don't want for people to be able to get the truth.
Yeah, so let's flip the coin a little bit because I'm a journalist by training. I mean, I have a journalism background. I follow it very closely in this country. We've got a huge problem with our journalistic community and our media here in the United States. Well, Ukraine's at war. And I mean, when the war broke out, some media was controlled. I think some Russian media outlets were told to go home and that type of thing. Now, how do you, on a daily basis, how do you pick and choose and find your way to the truth through the information that's available to you, and try to discern between truth and propaganda?
Well, probably I'm not the right person to ask because I also have a journalist background. I've been studying as a TV director, and of course, I had a course of journalism. And my wife is a journalist by profession, so I'm right in the middle of everything that's happening, and I know how to separate truth from lies. But well, fortunately, in Ukraine, we have a strong journalist community, and even when we had government that been loyal to Russia, we still had people who would tell the truth and who would investigate and who would bring some evidence for what's our government is doing. And that's why we had actually the few revolutions here in 2005 and in 2013. Because probably if our media have been the same as in Russia, and they've been working on these media since Russia started to be a Russian Federation in 1981. They've been taking all the medias under the government rulement. So right now there is just no free journalism in Russia, and unfortunately it's probably the most terrible thing.
All right, we've got just a few minutes remaining here. It looks like the video is giving us a little problem. Yeah, what do you think that is?
Well, 1 second, I will change the battery.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I'll bring this up on screen. This is a comment, and I'm human, folks. Let me tell you, I like compliments. And Sandy just played us a great one here. Sandy says, such an insightful interview. And I've been putting the other comments and questions up on
Thank you,
screen.
Sandy.
Yeah, Sandy, because I mean, that's why I do this. And I guess let's do a little more insight. Let me bring this up on screen now. These are some scenes here from the Associated Press, some pictures, and most of these aren't going to be pretty, but they're reality, folks. This is what war is. It's this and so much more. I mean, by and large, the war correspondents, the people over there are not, they're not in the midst of it. They're not out on the front lines with the fighting forces, but they're doing the best they can as embeds and what they're allowed to see. And I've got a few of these images from Associated Press. It says Ukrainians crowd under a destroyed bridge as they try to flee by crossing the river on the outskirts of Kiev. This is back in March. Is this anywhere near you, Sergey?
Yeah, that's actually the bridge that leads to Kiev, and it's from a city of Bucha and Irpin, and these cities were occupied by Russian militaries in spring of 2022, and they killed crazy amount of people there. People being buried in mass graves, and well, that's just terrible what's been happening there. Right now these cities are occupied, and they in a pretty much good-looking state, I must say, but unfortunately, during such things like you can see on the pictures, a lot of people been just killed by Russian militaries when they try to escape.
Yeah, I mean, a picture is worth how many words? So I'm going to just read the captions. You can comment any way that you like here. A woman walks past destroyed Russian tanks in Bucha on the outskirts of
Bucha,
Kiev.
Bucha.
Bucha, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The outskirts of Kiev, Ukraine. This is back in April of 2022. Yeah, let me bring the next one up here. Ukrainian emergency service employees and police officers evacuate an injured pregnant woman from a maternity hospital damaged by a Russian air raid in Mariupol. Again, these are small, hard for me to read. March 9th of 2022. And of course, Mariupol, you can see some great documentaries on this. This is going to be one of the stories that will live on forever because of the war as to what happened there. And this shows a little bit of the atrocity which, of course, is war. War is an atrocity. A man runs while recovering items from a Russian attack in Kharkiv, March 25th. Again, if you're listening in audio, these may not be that good for you because you can't see these images, but for people watching in video, I think these are great. Nila Zelenska holds a doll belonging to her granddaughter. When I first look at this, I thought, my God, is that a child? Well, she found the doll in her destroyed house in, what's the town there, Sergei?
Potashnia.
Potashnia, on the outskirts of Kiev, Ukraine, May 31st of 2022. She returned to her hometown while escaping war to find out she was homeless, and hopefully the child that belongs to that doll is okay. It doesn't say. Oh my God. So there's a lot of these, and they go on here. This is someone saying goodbye to their family, going off to Poland, and Sergei knows that all too well.
Yeah.
This is, again, the destruction. We're not talking about the humanity too much. This struck me as very poignant because this is a young man, a boy, and look at him in the ravages of war there with a gun. And just think of what he thinks about Russia and the invading army and those occupiers. And this is how war continues to go on for generations. And this young man, and who could blame him for the way that he'll feel his entire life for what's happened to him and his family. This is a graveyard in Bucha again. Laying someone to rest there. These are some, I don't know, we could just go on through these, but I guess we got to wrap it up here. I'm going to, these are so depressing. My God.
Yeah.
But I mean, geez. And they're not even showing the humanity losses, the blown apart, the horrific manner in which so many people die. It's not a John Wayne movie. I mean, what happens to people in war, it's something to be avoided at all cost. I don't think we did enough to avoid it or prevent it from happening. It's underway now. What Mearsheimer is saying, as Sergei says, some of it's true, probably some of it isn't, but if peace were to break out tomorrow, the Russians were to run back across the border and help rebuild everything they destroyed in Ukraine, and that ain't going to happen. But if that were to happen, this would still be a horrible black stain on history, never to be forgotten. And it's because of this damnable war. But that's just my little way to wrap up. Sir, hey, go ahead and give us a close here. Give us your feelings here as we wrap up this live line.
Well, my feelings are the same. We ain't going to give up, or there is no chances that Russian Federation will anyhow win this war. But unfortunately, the less aid we receiving for our militaries, the longer we will be fighting against these people. So everything I can say that we need much more military help than we have right now.
Yeah, and that brings us back full circle, because that came to the article, and I'm putting these comments up on screen from folks that, and here's Mary Moon, and she's followed my show for some time. I think she says, glad to hear your voice again. I mean, it's all good, but brings us back full circle to where we started here about this military aid and this wrangling and the politics, and everything that's going on. We'll continue to monitor it. We'll continue to check in with somebody that's there, somebody that's got firsthand, first line experience, got this background in journalism, watching the media, a great musician that can comment on the passing of Sinead O'Connor and Robbie Robertson and so much more. Sir, thanks again, as always, pal, for coming on the podcast by George Liveline.
Thank you, George. Bye.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry. God damn, I'm sorry about everything that is happening and how it's going to end. Nobody knows, but it's
no.
It's always
the most probable ending is that Russia will just fall apart. That's everybody's talking about, because there is no chances that they will stop. Even if Putin will die, there's all the structure of their government are already international criminals, so there is no chances that they will avoid the responsibility for that. So that's why we don't think that even something will happen with Putin. Russian army just disappears. So the most probable way to end this, that something will going on there inside of the government, that they will just fall apart for different countries who do not want to have anything common with Moscow, for example.
We could talk all day, but you just raised an issue here I got to ask about, because I tell people there are bigger nuts in Russian military and at the upper levels of Russian government than Putin, if you can believe that. There's a guy there that's like maybe second or third in line to run the country that's talking about using nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons. I mean, if that guy were to
he's talking about it on every occasion he appears on the media.
Yeah. Who is that guy?
But that's Dmitry Medvedev. I think he's head of defense, of government defense or something like that. Yeah, he was a president in some period of time. I think from 2008 to 2012. If I remember correctly. But nobody is sure that nuclear weapon that's in Russia is still working, because that's they didn't test it, and nobody knows if it been working during the Soviet Union time. So they talk about it so often, and they treat it to use it so often that nobody even cares about it anymore. I think in United States the situation is the same, and probably the more scariest thing that they controlling nuclear station near Zaporizhia, and that's probably the more scariest thing than Russian nuclear weapon.
Okay, and we got to let go with that. Yeah, I'm bringing this up on screen. I use this buymeacoffee.com to throw a few bucks his way. People ask you what's the easiest, best way to contribute to, to throw a few dollars in the coffee can, so to speak, to help out. Is that it, or what do you recommend?
Well, so far, yes. If you want to support me, you can use this link. But so far I don't need anything, so there is no urgency to support me. And in nearest future, we plan to continue our things with charity, but probably in a few weeks later, because I have 3 very big projects in the studio that I have to finish already. Yeah, and I'm very, very busy with that, but we plan to continue our things with charity, and we will let you know how you can help us.
Yeah, because he's a working musician, folks. As a matter of fact, when we were delayed here, he was just working. That's what the dude does.
I have to run the studio, I have to earn some money, and it's not easy during the wartime, I must say.
All right, pal. We're going to leave it there. We'll let you go. We'll check back in again very soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, pal, for coming on the live line as always, folks. And if you like seeing Sergey there in Kiev live on Podcast by George when my internet's working, for God's sakes. And thanks again one more time for sticking around for this. Go to podcastbygeorge.com and subscribe free to my show on Facebook and YouTube. You can do it right there on podcastbygeorge.com. Click the icons for those platforms. Follow us on Facebook, on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe and click the notification bell so that you'll be notified when he comes on again, and all of my other guests. And of course, if you just like to listen to the audio, if you'd prefer to do that, that's easily done at podcastbygeorge.com. Click on the icons for iTunes, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, or Apple Podcasts, I think it's called, even Amazon Music, all kinds of places to get the audio shows. But folks, that is going to do it. That is going to wrap it up. That's all there is. And there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.